Good afternoon. That's not a great angle. There we go. That's a bit better. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Bramall Lane, kind of Southwell. Paddy Davitt joining you here in Yorkshire for what I fear is going to be a conversation about even more injuries when the team news drops this afternoon. I mean, Paddy, they're already without an entire midfield. It's I mean, the team news is going to drop in a minute, so I might cut across you when that comes. But this already feels like a monumental task for Norwich City today.
Yeah, team who can go top, team who have only lost once here in the league. That was to Burnley, another promotion hopeful. Looks like they're spending money in the transfer window, big money. So, on current trajectories, it should only go one way. And when the news drops and there's confirmation of yet another injury to a senior player, then sadly, that will only reinforce the belief that it's going to be mission impossible here today.
Yeah, it's going to be a very, very young bench. I will say that when it drops in just a moment. And hey, look, maybe that will create a freedom and an ability to go out there and hopefully with nothing to prove and nothing to lose to an extent. That would be good. As Tant says, that's a very good point. Let's see what this team looks like, particularly the midfield. I think we're all intrigued to see how Johannes Hoff-Torp goes this afternoon with this. Obviously, the players that they have out is extensive. It has turned 2 o'clock. Norwich City's team is here, and it is as follows. Gunn in goal, Stacey, Duffy, Doyle and Ben Crisene as the back four. McLean, Callum Fisher starts in midfield. Emiliano Marcondes makes up that midfield three as well. Hernandez on the right, Dobbin on the left and Antti Sienats through the middle. The subs bench, which is, as we expected, very, very young. George Long, Brad Hills, Jaden Warner, who we'll come back to in a little while, Lucian Mahovo, Uriah Dejeje, Elliot Miles, Oscar Schwartau, Kennebo, and Josh Sargent. Paddy Davitt, no Jose Cordoba.
No, there's no Cordoba, is there, Connor? No. Knee, we believe, knee issue. No more than that, other than to put it in the context of it was a knee issue that, if you think back to the Leeds home game, back of the knee. He's had subsequently a few issues as well. I think they were knee related. We'll have to go back and check whether it was the same knee. So, we played the full 90 against Brighton last weekend. Giannis didn't suggest that there was any issue with him yesterday at his presser. So, for now, we await an update post. But probably wise not to sort of second guess how long that may be out. But thank you. But the reality is, if your Jose Cordoba is suffering with a knee issue, that might certainly be today and certainly Leeds midweek. So, I mean, in the sense of it would have been Duffy and Doyle today, you would expect. So, from the 11 point of view, maybe less so, but certainly in light of that bench, which is very young, to be without an international player, major summer signing, certainly along with Cernach, it's a blow, yeah. And again, and I've already seen the questions about injuries and what that says about how Norwich seemingly beset with these issues. Is there something deeper going on? It probably does flow into that conversation. You asked Johannes yesterday, what are they doing in terms of getting under the bonnet of these things? Well, in purely in Cordoba's case, that's a player who arrived with fitness issues after the Copa America. And sadly, he's had these knee-related issues all the way through, which has hindered his progress. Yet another one. So, not good, but in the here and now, all we know for definite is he's not available today through a knee issue.
Yes, and we will, of course, ask Johannes Hoff-Torp more about that post-game. This is a bit of a mad tunes that we've got over. Let's go straight to the midfield then, because I think that's where where we were expecting change. Obviously, we can list it. Remind me if I forget anyone. Anis Ben Slimani, Amanko Forson, Gabe Forsyth, Liam Gibbs. Who else am I missing? Nunez, and there's a sixth, isn't there, who I'm missing? Someone shouting. Sorensen, that's it. How could I forget Jakob Sorensen? And that means that Kenny McLean and Emi Marcondes are Norwich City's only fit senior central options. In comes Callum Fisher, who we've seen in this position in pre-season. We've seen it tried throughout the season to sort of differing variants of success. It's a tough old task for him today in there, isn't it?
It is, but I just had a glance there at the bench, and obviously Uriah Dejeje is a specialist in that CDM position, but do you throw him in this environment, or do you throw in Callum Fisher, who essentially has been in and around it now and getting a lot of minutes under Giannis? So I think it's needs must. I think the alternative maybe was Schwartau in there, who has, certainly the capability to play that area of the pitch, but maybe he wants the probably more athletic ability of Fisher. Technically, they're both very good players, potentially. But I think with Fisher, there's a bit of an added bite to the way his game is developing, and you're probably going to need that here against Sheffield United. If they can't stand up to what they're going to get in the middle of the park, it's going to be a very long afternoon. It may well turn into be a very long afternoon. But I think in terms of a bit of a combative element, McLean, we know, delivers that. Marcondes can put his foot in, but it's not his natural game. So I think Fisher, of the available options, and there are not many of those, as you said, 6 central midfielders unavailable today for various reasons. I'm looking at that bench, and other than the Swartau case, I think it had to be Fisher.
Yeah, well, I mean, let's go through the ages of this Norwich City bench. So you got George Long, who is obviously 31, Josh Sargent 24, Oscar Swartau 18, Brad Hills 19, 20. Uriah Jeje, who's 18, Elliot Miles, who's 17.
Yeah, 17.
Kenabo, who is 20, Lucian Mahovo, who's 20, 18, 19, 20, and Jaden Warner, who I think is 21, 22. So that goes to show just how young Norwich City have had to dip into. The reserves that they've had to dip into today. I mean, Uriah Jeje, I don't think he's been on a bench before. Obviously, Lucian Mahovo's got Jaden Warner, first time for him on a bench. It's very, very young.
Well, take Long out of the equation, but take Sargent out of the equation. How many minutes in first team action have the rest of them got together? I mean, it's a sample size which underlines that is. I mean, Johannes said, didn't he, yesterday, it will be the youngest bench he's certainly presided over as a Norwich manager. And in a game that's going to be quite gruelling, it's you're relying on potentially second half throwing some of them in at the deep end, because Leeds around the corner as well. It doesn't get any easier. So it is what it is. But it's I guess I've seen 1 or 2 comments. Johannes himself said, for those younger players, take Uriah Jeje to be on that coach today, away with the team overnight, learning what it's all about.
28,000 probably in this place.
Yeah, in sampling it at dugout, pitch side, today, all of that, brilliant for his development. But in the here and now, if you had to throw him in today, it's a tough ask for the man, the lad himself. It's a tough ask for his teammates as well. But that's the situation Norwich are in, unfortunately. And they've built this on youth. Well, they're certainly leaning heavily on youth for today. That is absolutely sure. And the concern is that 11 probably are going to have to go longer in terms of on-pitch time as a result today, and where does that leave them both in this game, when it could be decisive in the final stages, and also, Wednesday, quick turnaround, Leeds away. But I guess in here and now, you can't even really give Leeds too much consideration. It's all about today, and that 11 look competitive to me, albeit there's 1 or 2 areas where you feel they're a little bit lightweight, but below that, the reality is that bench doesn't feel like it's got much about it to tilt a game against a very, very good Championship side. So, we know those are the cards they're playing with. But, the reality is, does it improve Norwich's chances of getting a result here today with a bench as young as that? Absolutely not.
Are we in a position for the Sheffield United team? We are. There's a nod from Adam. So this is how they line up. They have got Cooper in goal, Gilchrist, Robinson, Amehodzic and McCallum at left back, Davis and Peck the midfield 2, Hamer O'Hare and Burrows as a free behind Rian Brustow. They spent big money on, didn't they, at the time, even though I know his spell here hasn't exactly gone to plan, but that means no Kiefer Moore for them in the team. He was a little bit of a doubt, and they haven't quite managed to get in a report circulating that they're very close to signing Brereton Diaz and Tom Cannon, but that obviously hasn't been done prior to this game. Their subs bench, again, to be fair, similarly to Norwich, containing a lot of young players. Luke Faxon, Tyrese Campbell, Jamal Baptiste, Reece Norrington-Davis, Louis Marsh, Femi Sariki, Ryan One, Billy Blacker and Owen Hampson. So, even we talk about Norwich City's injury issues, Sheffield United have got them as well, because beyond their 11, really, and look, there's some very talented players in there. You know all about Gus Hamer. You know all about Callum O'Hare in particular. Burrows, we saw at Carrow Road how strong he is. But similarly to Norwich, maybe there's not a whole host of options coming off that bench for them.
No, yeah, if we're clinging to straws, that Sheffield bench, none of those names really stand out as major game changers. So, there's 1 or 2 comments here that Sheffield punters are not overly enamoured with that match day squad, but certainly those players you referenced, they are very, very good Championship players, O'Hare and Hamer particularly. But yeah, leading the line, I mean, Brewster, that wouldn't strike fear into me as a Norwich defender, that's for sure. So for me, it's can Norwich do enough to almost stop the supply lines to the Hamers and O'Hares? Because if they get on the ball with that Burrows, they're good, technically good players at this level. They will create problems for that Norwich back line. But for all the clear issues in terms of player unavailability, a back line of Gunn in goal, Stacey, Duffy, Doyle, and Krasenny, who's been a regular over the last 2 or 3 weeks, that isn't dipping into your development crew. That's a pretty strong in terms of available options. Obviously, no Hanley now, no Cordova today. But so as a back five against Sheffield United, who looks strong in that just behind the front line, I'd take that as a contest, and let's hope Norwich can at least establish parity. And then it's further forward, isn't it? Without Sargent, with the greatest respect to Cernach, Hernandez, and
Dobbin.
Yeah, we haven't seen enough of Dobbin, but is that a forward three who are going to cause too many problems?
Certainly got a bit more pace about it, hasn't it, than maybe some of the Norwich attacks in recent weeks.
Yeah.
They've had players coming off the side. I guess this probably depends on where Hernandez plays, right? Because if he plays down the middle, then maybe that isn't it.
Yeah.
I mean, how do you see that shaping up, that front three? Because it could be Cernach down the middle.
Possible,
It could equally be Hernandez.
Yeah, because we've seen both. Yeah, I mean, interestingly for me, I was just going to add that clearly Johannes said after the Brighton game, Sargent would start one of these next two. So it would seemingly say on you go, son, at Ellen Road. Yeah. How many minutes does he get today, though? That's the thing. Yeah, I mean, that's an interesting one. If it is Hernandez and Cernach wider with Dobbin, big onus on Anel, isn't there, again? But I tend to think he might go with Cernach today, down the middle. Yeah, I think so, yeah.
See, I think he might tuck Cernach in, and then you have Stacey overlapping. Is my thinking, rather than having Stacey and Hernandez. He's been a little bit reticent to do that, hasn't he?
Yeah.
You think about when they went to Sunderland and the way that they used Hernandez as well. Yeah, he did do it at Luton, that's true. So to be honest, both ways wouldn't massively surprise me. In terms of the bench, I mean, Jayden Warner, he's had quite a week, hasn't he?
Yeah, funny enough, Dubai Canaries is asking us to post the bench, actually. Do you want to reel through that?
Yeah, well, I will read the bench. I think Adam is on it. I can see him typing away. The bench is Long, Sargent, Schwartau, Hills, JJ, Miles, Abo, Mahovo, and Jayden Warner.
Yeah. Yes, Joe Sargent is on the bench. I mean, trying to think, Jayden Warner, has he actually made a matchday 20 under Torop, apart from the Cup, league-wise? I don't think he has this season. I'm struggling. So it underlines where they're at, particularly with Cordova. Now we know why Warner's been elevated with Tompkinson moving on. I think there's more than a sense that maybe this window he could go the same route as Tompkinson, maybe interest from north of the border. But in the here and now, he's needed here. And I guess from his point of view, it's a difficult one because clearly he doesn't feature in the mid to longer term objectives. He's one of those who's out of contract in the summer. If they're willing to countenance a departure from him in January, that more or less says your time's up here. But he's needed today. He's a contracted Norwich player, and the way things are going, I mean, obviously Hills would be the first go-to. You think if they needed to do anything centre-back wise in this game, heaven forbid. But that's where we're at. I mean, a player like Mahovo just signed a new deal. Giannis is clearly very sweet on him. He thinks there's something to work with there. He's apparently been a cut above at development level. So for me, he's the sort of player today, could you expose him to a few minutes and just no pressure, see what he's about, and then maybe you learn something moving forward that he actually then stays in and around it for the rest of the season. We might be in that territory today. The result may go against Norwich in the final analysis, but if you go away from here and you're thinking one or two of them younger lads, okay, and maybe a bit closer to the first team than we thought, then that's not the worst postscript to what might be a very challenging afternoon.
Yeah, completely. And look, it's like, let's take someone like Ken Abo, for example, who's obviously been out on loan in League One, not played many minutes. He's come back. Football works in funny ways. If there is, and I'd be surprised, if there is an opportunity for him today, then it's for him to grasp then, isn't it? And to prove that actually maybe sending him out on loan isn't the best option, and maybe he can make an impact in and around the first team. And that, applies also to Warner and the various other types. And you kind of mentioned it, Paddy, and this was going to be my point really, particularly when we're looking at a week where not like the last couple where Norwich have had a full week in between and they could maybe afford to give some of those players longer minutes and keep them on the pitch for longer. doesn't really feel like there's that opportunity to do that. And of course, that comes in a week where they've got probably, well, this is one of the toughest away challenges. They probably have the toughest on Wednesday night in terms of home form.
Yeah, I mean, obviously you'd like to be inside where Johannes is thinking here with these two games, because two incredibly difficult challenges in the Championship right now. You look at the league table. But now I've seen that Sheffield 20, this feels like maybe of the two, if you're going to get anything, because Leeds at Ellen Road, as we know this season, very difficult assignment. So do you prioritise today? But by Sargent's not starting today, that tells me no, he's keeping his options open. But I'll be inclined to think of the two games, looking at that Sheffield lineup, looking at the injuries they've got, some of the younger players on their bench, could you get something here today? So, and then if he goes with that mindset, then you're obviously going to go long with some of those more seasoned Norwich players, which isn't going to help them when they go to Ellen Road on Wednesday. But the reality is this is the first one in front of them, so you have to go full pelt for me for this game. So, yeah, if I'm looking at it, I'm thinking where could they pick up a point or three out of these next two? It's probably here rather than Leeds.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And that is why I think when the role of Josh Sargent, which maybe has been lost in our conversation so far, I know you mentioned it earlier, but this is the first Championship game that he's been available for since November. And okay, he's on the bench, but if Norwich can keep themselves competitive, if they can keep themselves in this game for long periods, to then throw him into it, maybe it does then for the last 20 minutes allow you to open up a bit more, take a bit more of a risk, and try, and if they're chasing the game in whatever capacity that may be, even if they're leading the game, to help see it out, and that injection of energy, get the ball up the pitch, it's not a half bad option to bring on.
No. 20, 25 minutes. I mean, what did he get? He was about 15 against Brighton, wasn't it? Even in that little cameo, the first sort of act he had was to, in contrast to Cernach, hold the ball up, give them a platform, and I think there was an overlapping run, set Norwich on their way, and there was another decent delivery late on, and he rose there and just behind him. So there's more of a presence, clearly, from him leading the line, and if they were, if they got to 65-70 and they're at maybe either
0-0, let's say.
Yeah, 0-0 or even a goal adrift, then to have him as an option, you've got to get him on the park, and then because of his pedigree at this level, there's always a sense that something could happen. He needs players around him, of course, but I think that's probably maybe where Johannes is thinking today, that just try by hook or by crook be in this game at 60-65. One thing I do know, whenever I've come here as well, this is a crowd who can get behind you, but it can also go the other way. And if they get a bit frustrated and maybe that their team aren't performing as they expect, and that feeds into the narrative as well. And in that environment, the pressure comes on. The expectation is they will win today, I'm sure, around this place anyway. So, yeah, it might just be try and stick in the game and then unleash a Sargent and then see where we go. And you never know then. If when he's on the pitch, Norwich are clearly going to be a better attacking force in the final third.
Yep, for those of you joining us late, you can see Norwich City's team scrolling down there. The headline news, otherwise, Jose Cordoba not in the squad today. We understand that's a knee injury, and we'll, of course, get a bit more of an assessment from Johannes post-game. And as for Shane, who's asked about Brad Hills, he's on the bench this afternoon. We did flash the subs up earlier. Maybe Adam can go back and find that and just flash those up for those people who have joined us a little bit late. There you go. That's the subs bench. Brad Hills, very much a part of it. Before we come on to predictions, Paddy, which I think is going to be exciting.
It's a sunny day. That's the only prediction.
It's a lovely sunny day. Transfers. What did you make of Johannes' answer yesterday? Because they've obviously got Mateo Jurasek in the building, but he's not yet in the building, and we know the weight and the reasons for that. We've obviously explained that across our platforms all week. So if you haven't caught that, you can go and find it. But yeah, what did you make to his response, particularly around midfield? Because that is clearly the area that Norwich City are looking especially light in, but obviously with the bench it looks like a lot of other areas as well.
Yeah. Well, I mean, he seemed to shut it down. Wasn't there, you were there, obviously, mate. But I mean, the sense watching it anyway was that they don't feel it's worth the payoff to go out and get a centre midfielder. Now, for me, that's the wrong call. If you've got 6 unavailable and 3 or 4 of them, you couldn't give a definitive timeline. Even Nunes, it was if we push on the aggressive side, it'll be 3 weeks. Well, what if they don't? And it's 4, 5, 6 weeks. It's not beyond the realms. That's how it was. That's how it played out earlier in the season with him. Why you wouldn't entertain a loan? A good top end, maybe younger option from a Premier League club for the rest of the season. That to me given the 6 centre mids out, would make sense, but doesn't seemingly seem where Johannes is going with that. Johannes and Ben Napper. And then beyond that, I thought the other interesting element was we'll continue to look, but it was almost with a view to if somebody comes in that we're not expecting for one of our players, and then we'll be ready to react as they were in the summer. Ida goes, Cernach is in the building, short order, and so on. So that smacks of they're not actively looking to bring anybody else in the rest of this window. So I think that's where they're at. And also the big line from me from yesterday was in more or less conceding that the summer again the squad will look considerably different. So are they now the focus already shifting to the summer? Out of contracts, one or two of those other key players who come in by the summer, 12 months out from their contracts. It feels like it's pointing to a big summer, and sadly, not a huge amount happening between now and the end of January.
No, I agree with what you said there. All I would add to it as well is I think I can understand why, if you were Ben Napper, if you were Johannes off top, looking at those midfield options and thinking, well, it'll be okay because in 3 weeks maybe Slimani will be up to a period where he's nearly back. Nunez, I'd be surprised if he's back in 3 weeks. I'll be honest. That's my view. But let's hypothetically go along with that timeline. Even if he's back in 3 weeks, you're still relying on Liam Gibbs as well, who's had 3 major injuries in 12 months. Jakob Sorensen, who seemingly can't get himself fit for a prolonged period of time. You're relying on players who have struggled in terms of being available regularly anyway.
When you're throwing Gabe Forsyth into this equation, there's a teenage player who's had barely any minutes in the first team. He cannot be in the equation to come in and affect it in the chat. We're talking about the young players on the bench today, and it's a stretch to expect them to come in and actually affect the play. For me, the same applies to Gabe Forsyth. He's further along, clearly, because he's had more exposure. But for him to be in this equation would seem to me premature and extreme. And that's even, we don't know, because Johannes can't give us a clear timeline when he might be back. So, yeah, it seems to me that there's a hell of a gamble going on now. If you're free for the foreseeable are going to be Fisher, Marcondes, McLean, maybe with Schwartau in the conversation for the next month or so, that's a huge risk.
It is. It's a massive risk, and it's going to be interesting to see whether maybe events of this week, and we've documented how difficult this week is going to be. Sheffield United, as you said, have only been beaten here once this season. That was to Burnley. They've conceded 5 goals here all season as well, and 2 of those were to Burnley in that game. They've been very, very good on this ground, and it's going to be tough. Leeds have been even better at Elland Road. I think they've only lost once as well, haven't they? But they've taken a lot of points. They've scored only below Norwich the second highest amount of home goals. So yeah, it's as Paul very wisely says, it is a big risk if Kenny McLean and or Emi Marcondes were to suffer any issues. And of course, we've even seen the disciplinary aspect of this season and the damage that's done to them. So yeah, they are taking a monumental risk, I think, by if they decide, and look, this could change, but if they decide not to head into the market. Prediction.
Well, Nick's gone 3-1 Sheffield. I could see that. 2-0 Sheffield. And that might be on the generous side for Norwich, but always a difficult place to come here. If Norwich had come here with all their frontline options, they've still got a tough afternoon ahead of them. As it is now, the mitigation, of course, will be there now in terms of whatever Norwich produced today and at Leeds, but it's a shame, really, because 10 points from 12 after that festive period, everything's set up, Sargent's back in the mix, on we go, lads. And it's like deflating again that we're here today and midweek and maybe for the foreseeable in certain cases with an undermanned squad, and that's probably going to have an impact in terms of Norwich building on that festive momentum. So, yeah, home win all day long. Connor?
Yeah, so I'll tell you what I fear, and then for what I hope. So I fear that this could be a 3-0 job and be pretty comfortable, and Norwich City get a little bit bullied. I hope that it's going to be a really, really positive performance, that they're going to be able to show a lot of heart, a lot of courage, and that they can rescue a point or potentially even nick something greater.
So, hold on, how many results are you going with there?
Well,
Which one are you going for?
So hear me out. So I was saying, the best case scenario, I think I'd hope or like to think that Norwich City could get a draw here this afternoon, but I fear, along with you, that this is going to be a long afternoon. And I'm going
so your final answer, who wants to be a millionaire,
is home win 3-0.
Right. So Andy agrees with you.
Yeah, I think this could be just a little bit step too far. Let's not even think about Wednesday night at this stage. Of course, Bingham.com is the place to go. I really hope that's right. I think if Norwich get any points out of the next two, that would be particularly in line with the fitness stuff. That would be a mega achievement. As you know, as good away following here today. Norwich's players just emerging for their warm up, and we know what adversity can do to teams. So hopefully they can utilise all of that this afternoon. Pingdom.com, the place to go. We'll have all your analysis, all your coverage. I'll be on the live blog throughout the afternoon. I might end up watching below the desk I'm sat on, but let's hope that's not the case. And we're talking about a Norwich City result against all odds. Thank you very much for joining us. See you soon.